Hey guys, so originally I was going to rank every Chris Chibnall episode, but then I realized I don't like to be negative on this channel, and enough people have made fun of Chris Chibnall, so I thought I'd do something different. I'd rank every Regeneration episode. This came to me semi-recently because Shooty Gatwa just exploded out of nowhere, and we got a surprise regeneration, which I don't think was planned. I'll go to my grave with that theory that it, that was not planned. That was waited till the last minute. But anyway, here we are talking about all 15 regenerations. I'm not including that time David Tennant regenerated into David Tennant. That doesn't count. And the Royal Doctor doesn't count because if you regenerate in the same episode in which you came from, and you're also not really like a main Doctor, I don't really think that counts. The Day of the Doctor was one of my favorite episodes of the entire series, but it doesn't really come off as a regeneration episode. So I'm just going to talk about all the main Doctors, 1 through 15. Okay, let's start off with the 10th planet. Oh, by the way, guys, if it's a C or a C plus, it doesn't mean I didn't like it. It means I did like it. It was not one of my favorites. So I know people get upset when I give something a C, but C means good. C plus means great. So the 10th planet. This was a very daring episode, because like regeneration has never been a thing before. This coming out of nowhere was crazy. Very genius way of getting rid of a main actor whose health was unfortunately deteriorating by this point. Um, I I love the introduction of the Cybermen. I love the story itself. It's very creepy, and I think they used black and white to its advantage. Makes it more creepy instead of making it look cheap. The Cybermen are iconic. This is my favorite design of the Cybermen. The most stripped back, bare bones version makes them look more human, which in turn makes them look creepier. I will say though, it's not one of my favorite Regeneration episodes because it doesn't really feature the Doctor that much, and I get why, because William Hartnell was very ill at the time, so he wasn't even in part 3, and a lot of his lines in the other parts were given off to the supporting cast. But I still think the little he is in this episode, he is very good, and it makes me sad that he didn't stick around longer, but glad that he got a really good story to end on. Moving on to the War Games. I love this episode. It's a 10-part epic. This is getting a B. Uh, it's one of my favorite Regeneration episodes. It's a really good story because you don't really know what's going on until like halfway through, and the last 2 episodes are pure like adrenaline whole. Um, Patrick Troughton does a great performance here. So does Fraser Hines and Wendy Padbury. The villain, the warlord, is great. The war chief is great. The whole idea of traveling from one war to another through this fog and everything getting all scrambled up is such a cool idea. I've never seen anything quite like it before, and it makes for great storytelling. Um, Also, the ending is devastating with Jamie and Zoe losing their memories. Fortunately, RTD brought that back and got the memories back in the 60th. So, at least we got some solace. But it's just sad because, like, what could have been? They could have been on the show forever. Moving on to Planet of the Spirals. This is a pretty good story. It doesn't really feel like a regeneration story until like the last 2 parts, but it's still a decent story. I like the how Unit is involved. I think them being such a huge presence in John Poetry's era, them being involved is a given. It would have been weird if they weren't. The whole time travel plot and the mind control by the giant spirals. Doctor Who's done a lot of giant spirals, and this is probably the best one they've done. John Poetry does a great performance here, and so does Elizabeth Sladen. You could tell that he's afraid of going, but he knows he has to. He takes it with dignity, and he shows that like even the Doctor gets afraid sometimes, and that's okay. You got to face your fears. So this one gets points for being. John Poultry is my second favorite Doctor, right behind Peter Capaldi. So it's very sad to see him go. but he does good. He has a good final story. It's kind of a it's not anything amazing though. It's like your typical John Poultry story, which is usually really good. And Newer Generations is kind of there. It has a theme throughout the story though. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It's built up with like the Buddhist themes of change and stuff. Moving on to Legopolis, which is the final story in Tom Baker's era. He stayed on this over 7 years, so his final story has a lot going on it. You know, he's probably the most iconic Doctor. Not my favorite Doctor, but I still really like him. This story definitely feels like a season finale. You have the return of the Master, played by the delightful Anthony Ainley. Him scheming against the Doctor and destroying like a billions of people is very dark way to end the Doctor's tenure on. We get introduced to Tegan, which feels like a weird place to introduce Tegan in the final story of the Doctor. You introduce a new companion. Seems kind of strange. I would have introduced her at the start of the next season, but I love Tegan, so I don't really care that much. Uh, Nissa and Adric got a lot to do, but this is mainly Tom's story, and you could tell them building up to it with him seeing the Watcher. I like the Watcher idea a lot. I like how it's never fully explained who this is or why he is the Doctor. It's never really explained, and I like a little uncertainty sometimes. So I think it's a nice way to end the Doctor's run. Very bittersweet because he says it's the end, but the moment has been prepared for. And the Doctor's life goes on. He turns into five. We all love five. Moving on to the Caves of Andruzani, which is a great story. I love this story. It's Peter Davison's best story. Ironic because it's his last story. Um, I think Davison gets shit on. His era gets shit on a lot, but I enjoy the majority of his stories, so I don't really see the hate. But The Caves of Androzani is definitely his best story. It's very dark. It's written by Robert Holmes, and usually Robert Holmes stories are a mix of horror and humor. This one is just straight up horror. It's definitely inspired by the Phantom of the Opera, mixed with like this huge, dark, depressing drug feud going on. Uh, the Doctor is at his lowest point, and even then, he's still fighting, which I think sums up the Doctor as a whole. He's fighting to save his friend. Savik Jack, I think that's how you say his name, is such a memorable character. He's such a good character for being in just one episode. Um, Probably one of my favorite one-off villains of all time, if you could even call him a villain, because pretty much everybody in the story besides the Doctor and Perry is a villain. So yeah, great story, great ending. Moving on to Time of the Rani, which shouldn't even count as a Generation story, because the Sixth Doctor's only in it for like a minute. It's not even the Sixth Doctor. It's just Sylvester McCoy in a blonde wig. This is an awful way to go. It's not really clear why he regenerates. It's implied that he like hits his head or something after the Rani zaps his TARDIS. But there's a lot of behind the scenes issues with Colin Baker being unceremoniously fired, being blamed for the poor writing, even though he didn't write the show. It's not his fault. So he refused to film a regeneration scene. So that's kind of why this scene comes out of nowhere and seems very random. So on one hand, you can't blame him, but on the other hand, it still sucks. So the less time spent talking about this story, the better. Moving on to the TV movie. This sucks too. It sucks as a movie, and it sucks as Sylvester McCoy's final story. So this is how the Seventh Doctor regenerates. He lands in Los Angeles, steps outside, and immediately gets shot like 50 times, which I'm surprised doesn't take place this week, given the recent news. But yeah, what a strange way to end the Doctor's era, especially one as well loved as Sylvester's. I think he's a great Doctor. And to see him go like this is a bit strange. It seems like I like how they brought him back, That's a nice little bridging the gap between the original series and this new era that never actually happened because this movie sucked ass. But I feel like the execution was really bad, as with his execution. Moving on to my favorite regeneration. It's the Night of the Doctor. I know it's only 7 minutes long, and it came out 3 doctors later than it should have. But finally, we see how Paul McGann regenerates. Paul McGann, I always feel like got the short end of the stick, but he gives an amazing performance here. Such desperation and like giving up hope. It's so sad to see. It's probably the most traumatic regeneration because there's really no silver lining. It just leads him into the raw doctor path, which is very depressing. And um, I don't know. I like how gloomy this is because we know he's going to be fine, but this is probably the darkest period in his entire life, and having that to go on is very depressing. Um, Honestly, instead of regenerating into Billy Piper, my dad was like, "Why didn't he just regenerate into Paul McGann and give him an actual chance of being the Doctor?" Which I think is a great idea. They should have just did that. Moving on to the Parting of the Ways, which is tied for my favorite regeneration episode. This is the final episode to feature Christopher Eccleston, who was only on the show 1 season, but definitely left his mark and is an iconic Doctor. I love his regeneration, him facing off against the Emperor Dalek, last seen in The Evil of the Daleks, him saving Rose after Rose comes back to save him, but this time it cost him his life. But there's really no hesitation. He just does it. He doesn't whine about it. He doesn't complain. He's glad for the time he had and glad he met Rose. And there's really no regrets here. He doesn't bitch about it for 20 minutes like David Tennant did. He just he just does it. And he gives a great speech. Then he explodes and we never see him again. I wish they stayed another season, but I know him and Russell had some tension, which is why he left the show prematurely. But, at least you have those audios I can't afford. Not going to pay for those things. They're like $40 each. Moving on to The End of Time. I think this is a pretty good finale episode. Besides what I said earlier about him bitching for 20 minutes before he actually does regenerate. I love Timothy Dalton as Rassilon. I love the whole Gallifrey conflict, even if it is wrapped up a little quickly, but still, they present a really looming threat. I love the use of Will as a companion. John Sim kind of gets on my nerves sometimes because he doesn't really even feel like the master at this point. He just feels like this weird, like, zombie. But I love David Tennant's chemistry with Wilf, and I'm glad he actually got to be a companion for once. It was also nice seeing all the other companions one more time before we go, and it's nice to check in on Donna and see that she has a happy ending. Though she gets another happy ending for the 60th, but still, I think it's a pretty good finale. Moving on to it doesn't feel like a finale anymore because David Tennant was the 14th Doctor as well, so it's like that kind of negates it. But at the time, it was really good. Moving on to The Time of the Doctor, which is Matt Smith's final episode, I think it's a very good finale. If it is a bit rushed, though, I feel like this could have been a 90-minute special instead of a 60-minute, because I feel like things are moving so fast. But I think the final act of the episode makes up for it. Him growing old and saying goodbye to Clara, and it's very emotional. And Matt Smith is such a great actor that he pulls it off. His final speech against the Daleks before he explodes. But then he's better, and then he makes like a more of a sweet speech to Clara, and sees Amy again, regenerates. The whole like second half of the episode is perfection. I just the first half was expanded upon more because the first half is like boom, 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 get to the plot, get to the plot. While the second half is much more sentimental, which I like. Moving on to Twice Upon a Time, which is the finale of my favorite Doctor, Peter Capaldi. So this episode is good because I think if we regenerated at the end of the Doctor Falls, it would have been a little too depressing. But he has the times to accept his death, if you will. He gets to see Bill again, and we get some closure there. We get some closure with Clara, even if it's very obvious that's just Jenna Coleman in a different studio with a green screen. Capaldi gives a great performance. I like his interactions with David Bradley as the Doctor. I think David Bradley does a great William Hartnell impression. However, the way Moffat wrote the first Doctor kind of pisses me off because he makes him very sexist, which he wasn't when he was actually the Doctor. It's very random, very odd choice because I feel like the first Doctor was not sexist at all. Like, yeah, he'd say rude things, but honestly, he was rude to everybody. That's just who he was. So making him specifically sexist seemed like a very odd decision. Moving on to The Power of the Doctor, which is Jodie Whittaker's final episode, and, like Davison, her best episode. Though I think Davison had more good than bad, Jodie had more bad than good. I don't blame Jodie Whittaker, she didn't write the show. I blame the writing, but I think Chibnall did a great job at wrapping up Jodie's era, even if it just seemed like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because you have a lot going on in this episode. You have like 5 returning doctors, you have a bunch of returning companions, you have the Daleks, the Master, and the Cybermen. It seems like a lot. The plot doesn't make much sense about about the Master like stealing the Doctor's identity and then trying to get her canceled. Seems kind of strange. But I do like Shasha's Master. I think he does a great job as the Master. And Jodie does a great performance here. I like when she's talking to the other doctors. I like her talking to Ace and Tegan, and it shows Yaz how once the doctor's done traveling with them, she doesn't really come and visit, which it's kind of like Yaz sees this as a slap in the face, and I just wish that Yaz chose to leave the doctor instead of the doctor kind of kicking Yaz out for no real reason. Um, this didn't happen in other regenerations. Usually, sometimes in regenerations, the companion would stay along with the doctor, like Clara or Sarah Jane or Ben and Polly. Here, the doctor's like, yes, I'm gonna need you to get out. So that seemed random, but overall, I thought the episode was pretty enjoyable. Moving on to The Giggle, which is the 14th Doctor's third and final episode. I love Neil Patrick Harris. I love the Toymaker. Donna is always wonderful. Um, what else happened this episode? We have Kate Stewart. That's always nice to see. Oh, speaking of Kate, where has Osgood been the past decade? What's he been up to? Sorry, just a random aside. I think the Google's great. The bi generation thing seems like a cop out in order to give the 14th Doctor a happy ending while still going on as the 15th Doctor. Considering the show is all about change and, accepting change, seems like kind of a cop out to have the 14th Doctor basically retire and is never seen or mentioned again. Um, when he would have been very useful in, say, the Sutek episode or the Reality Rule or 73 Yards or basically any modern day episode that Shooty's had. So, yeah, plot holes and strange endings aside, I still really enjoy The Giggle. I think Neil Patrick Harris and David Tennant make it worth it. Moving on to Reality Rule, which I swear was not meant to be the finale of Shooty's era. Very haphazard, thrown together. It's like Russell was like, "Oh, how am I gonna end this? Who cares at this point? We'll have Omega show up and eat the Ronnie, and then get defeated 2 seconds later. Then introduce this baby nobody cares about, and have Belinda get retconned into always wanting to go back to this baby. Seems very random. Seems out of place. The Doctor regenerates before we really just as I'm getting to like him because I didn't like his first season, but I enjoyed his second season and he really grew on me over time. So having him leave so quickly after I start to actually like him seems like a waste. I liked Chris Eccleston right from the get go, so I feel like we got enough time of me liking him. But here, I don't know. Seems like he hasn't been on that long. And having him regenerate into Billy Piper, I mean, I'm gonna reserve my judgments until I actually see how this goes. But I don't know. It just seems kind of random. Who knows? We might not even have another season, and that might be the final Doctor Who we'll ever see, which is sad because it sucks ass. So here we have it, folks. These are every regeneration episode ranked into tier lists. I'd say like the A tiers are tied and then the B's are tied. So it's not really a ranking of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's, different tiers here. But all I know is that I hope the show doesn't get canceled. I hope Russell becomes a better writer again. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.